Everyone. Welcome to our first 2022, which I think is the year, ArtPath Artist Talk. Thank you for coming out on this beautiful but windy evening. I'm Michelle Carlson. I'm the Acting Executive Director of the Lansing Art Gallery and Education Center. For those of you who don't know, we are a 501c3 nonprofit. We've been around for over 50 years, so we're a mainstay here in the arts community. We just recently moved to a new location, so if you haven't come to our new location on South Washington, please come over and check us out. I think you'll be really surprised. Today we are going to be talking with Doug DeLind, the artist of this wonderful cat bench. And I want to thank our site sponsor of CATA, transportation sponsored, as well as auto owners, excuse me, that was a tongue tie, and Rathbun Insurance Agency. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to do this wonderful public art exhibition. Thank you to our staff, especially Katrina Daniels, who is the co-founder of this wonderful project. And I see a couple of our board members here in the audience. Thank you for your support. Woo! So, without further ado, before we go away, here you go, Doug. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Did I lose volume?
Nope.
Okay, I can't hear myself. So, having done art fairs for 40 years, this wind scares the living daylights out of me. The tent and the flying pieces of artwork are always scary. So I'm glad the cat bench is well anchored. The cat bench was inspired by our cat, Shirley. Shirley got her name because she is actually Shirley Sue. Our daughter was in medical school when Shirley showed up. Our daughter, much better. Our daughter was in medical school when Shirley showed up, and she had a very hard teacher who was from South Africa. Her was Dr. Shirley Sue. So Jody named our cat Shirley Sue so she could holler at her. Shirley was a 1-pound cat when she arrived. Her tail was on the ground, and she was covered with her own feces. So she got cleaned up and went to the vet and became a $1,000 cat very quickly. She's been my studio mate for the last 15 years. She'll walk on a piece if she doesn't like it. If I'm not paying attention to petting her, she'll reach over and grab my paw. So it's been fun. It's been a good relationship. And she usually doesn't complain as long as I give her treats. The piece originally was designed for the Cleveland Transit Authority. I came real close, but I did not get the commission. There were going to be benches for the Cleveland Transit Authority. And it just existed on a piece of paper, and I kept looking at the drawing, and I really liked it. So I went over to our fabricating shop in Mason, which is H&H, which stands for Hoot and Holler. And they cut the aluminum for me, and I went ahead and put in landscaping boards for the bottom part of it. So it was a fun project, and after the first one, this is the original. After the first one, they said, well, if you make a template of it, we'll put it on the machine. It'll cost you less to have it done. Well, they put it on the machine, and I had 5 made, and it didn't cost any less. Hoot and Holler are a good bunch. They're willing and they're able, so I can't complain. It's always fun. It's always a challenge to have a piece off to the general public. As an artist, I always consider it the highest achievement, because when we work so people can enjoy our work or can see our work. So I'm very thankful for this to take place, and I'm glad it's taking place around the country in different venues. But and at this point, It's a very welcome addition to how an artist can make some money, and for younger artists it's extremely hard to break in. So this kind of gives a platform, and I keep thinking, you know, I should just back off, and I'm not a younger artist anymore.
Young at heart.
Pardon?
At heart.
At heart. Young at heart, yeah. Yeah. Surely keeps me that way. This last year I have had in my studio, I found that being young at heart is very important, but I will usually try and find a younger person to come in at least once a week. Simply because a lot of times they don't have that, quote, respect. You know, they can ask hard questions, and it's really enjoyable for me to be challenged. So Zane comes in once a week and works with clay, so that keeps me young a little bit. Are there questions about being an artist as a career, or
Yes.
Yes.
I'm curious about what, I'm trying to talk really loud here. I'm curious about what really drives you, what grabs you and says, this is what I'm going to do. How does that work? The creative process, that's what I want to hear about.
It's a good time to think about that, because during the COVID, my muse took a trip, just was gone for a while.
Wow.
And when I started working, I have a degree in sculpture, and then I went ahead and got a degree in ceramics, because I realized that bronze casting was a good way to turn your hands to hamburger and your lungs to charcoal. So I went ahead and got a degree in ceramics and worked in ceramics. But when I started, people were making in clay. I realized that I was not a functional person. I wasn't going to make anything that was consistent, that was always a little different. So I sculpted with clay. And at that time, people were making plaster casts of their faces and pushing the clay in and then taking the clay and glazing it. And it drove me crazy, because they were like death masks. But I became kind of interested in the whole idea of representing the human face. And I was in New York, and I went to the Met, and I was looking at the Greek funeral portraits, and how they varied, and how the very, very early Greeks abstracted the face. And I became more and more interested in creation myths and different the way ancient civilizations represent their community, and how at one point they'll say, this is us, this is our people. So, and in my work, I feel like that's what I try and do. I say, this is me, this is my community at this point in time. And in my clay pieces, quite often I use scraps and bits that are thrown out, pieces of comb, pieces of different pieces that are just part of our 21st century. During the time when my muse was not with me, I harkened back to that time and realized that I was always fascinated by creation myths. So I have started again to do, I thought about it, and said, well, hell, go to Genesis. So I'm doing a series of Genesis now, reinterpreting the visage of God as different peoples, different genders, different kind of positionings. Mm-hmm. So it's been fun. And,
wow.
And the other thing is I Raccoon fire, and I make mistakes, and that keeps me going. Pieces just don't work sometimes. So, and if they all worked every time, it would be boring. So yeah. Failure helps too.
Learn to fail well.
Thank you. Are there other questions? I see you have one of the necklaces on.
Yeah. I put it on so I can
That's my clay work, kinda. It's usually a lot bigger, but that's the raccoon. Those are the raccoon pieces.
I have a question.
Yes, Sarah.
I know that you do a lot of work in ceramics, and you're also talking about like bronze casting and whatnot, but obviously obviously you also work in metal. Like, when did you start doing that, and what draws you to that?
Well, when you work in clay, you're always fighting gravity. So, at some points you just say, I want to make something tall. So I started modeling things. One spring I just was going through our barn, and there were these 12-foot long pieces of wood that were very old. So I just carved the MSU basketball team out of them. And that was the hook shot. It was Aloysius Anagagna that I had cast in bronze, and that is right. That's been in this show, but it's also been up north. But it's just very exciting for me to make something that's so ridiculously tall. I had a piece on the barn that I never had the guts to find out how much it would cost me to get a cast. It was about 20 feet tall.
Wow.
Other questions? Yes, Esther.
Oh, yeah. Where can you see the pieces from Genesis?
Oh, thank you. The Genesis is going to be in Chicago at the Vail Craft Gallery on Superior, and the show is going to go up September 8th. It's going to be the opening.
Wow.
But I probably should take pictures and put some online. I'm excited about it, and the whole idea of going back to a familiar tale and retelling it with different faces has been a lot of fun for me. Yes, Katrina.
Do you prefer working like in a gallery space or in a public art space, or do they just have different benefits?
Oh, I have a confession on that one.
Oh, good.
I did art fairs and galleries for 50 years. And not the Lansing Art Gallery, but the commercial galleries. About half my living was made during art fairs, and half of it was made from galleries. And the galleries would have been happy if I could have made blue shirts and always given them the best, was my impression. And when I would go out to the public and show my work and listen to what people said about it, that's really what kept me going. And having finished that phase of my life, I do miss the strokes. Other questions? Michelle?
What, in your process, in your work, do you continually learn new things about your technique, or do you discover something new about your material?
Yeah, I always work cheap and dirty. It's the quickest way to do it. It's my son and I have rebuilt a couple of houses together. It's a constant fight because if it works, do it kind of thing. So yes, I guess I have the honesty and perception for art that children have. The quickest way to present my image is the best way to do it. Yes.
How did you raise your kids? Because I know your kids are all artists. Tell me about that.
That was kind of a fun thing because I think I'm probably a lousy teacher because I do not tell somebody how to do it. Basically, they were welcome to use my benches and my tools, and I didn't instruct them. They just kind of naturally gravitated down toward that space. For myself, if I was getting ready for a show or something, I knew I would have to leave a whole bunch of empty cardboard boxes on top of my benches so I didn't come down and have to move a project in order to work. But they were very self-motivated.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
For my younger artists, where you're at now, how is that? Have you noticed the changing style or stuff
Yeah, it happened too fast. Well, I remember, when I first get out there for the art fairs, and I'd have all my work spread out, and people would look at me and they'd say, "Geez, I thought you would be older." They don't say that anymore. So, but I tend to be. I have to hold my hand back a lot of times. I was simply much more direct as a younger artist, and now I have that big plane of smoothness, and I want to put decorations all over the surface kind of thing. That's hard. That part's hard to kind of push my mind back and say, I may like it, but it kind of makes it more complicated to understand. Other questions?
What you mentioned Dougie working Raccoon sometimes. What drew you to Raccoon?
What do I?
What drew you to working in Raccoon?
Oh, that was an easy one. It's quick, it's cheap, it's quick and dirty. Raccoon fire, and it's also very individual. Raccoon is, you make your piece, you disfire your piece, you glaze your piece, and then the Raccoon Kiln is more like a blast furnace than a traditional kiln. The temperature goes like that. So I heat my kiln up for about 2 hours. I have friends that heat their kilns up for 20 minutes. And by heating it up, I mean going from atmosphere to 1800 degrees. By going up in 2 hours, and the other thing I like a lot about it is that when you do a high fire, you have to constantly peek in the hole and see if the cones have tipped over, and they never tip over because it's 2300 degrees, and you just, with Raccoon, I just peek in the kiln and see if the glazes are liquid. When they're liquid, I lift the lid off the kiln, reach in with iron tongs, take a single piece out. When it hits the air, the glaze hardens instantly, and it crackles because the glaze is glass, and the clay is a different material, so they don't quite fit. I put the piece into a garbage can full of newspapers and put the lid on, and there's an incredible amount of smoke and flame, so it's fun. I get to play with clay and fire. The clay at that time is red hot, so it'll grab onto the carbon that's in the garbage can. So instead of being white, the clay body is black. So I have a black field to work with my colors, which is also very nice. While it's in there, it wants oxygen, so it'll pull the oxygen off copper oxide-based glazes. It's never consistent because there are different thicknesses in the clay body, so I have a variation. So it's after 2 hours, and then I wait for a half hour or more to open it back up again. It's a surprise. Sometimes the piece breaks because that's an awful thing to do, take some out when it's red hot from the can, but it's always a surprise. The colors are never exactly what I want.
I have a question.
Yes.
So when did you get started doing like public art, and maybe just like how you got into that, and like your first piece of public art that you made?
Well, the first piece was the Catabus Station.
Oh, okay.
And it was a really kind of a dumb one on my part because Sandy Dragoo was the person in charge, and it's going to be a little bit before I remember the two people who were my handlers, which I needed at that time. So the commission for the bus station was $40,000. And I had proposed putting a brass figure in the middle of the bus station that would be tall, and as a side thing I said, and I'll throw in a little mural over the telephone area. And so Sandy had asked me, and I had during the meeting, I had made a doodle, which that's usually my best work anyhow. And our daughter had just gotten back from Africa, and she was familiar with the buses in Africa. So she said, "You got to put animals on this bus. You know, everything's on this bus." And I went down to the bus station and watched, and it also served a huge community. So the Amish were there, blind people were there. I mean, so I tried to include them all in my drawing, but it was a pretty minimal drawing. And Sandy really liked it, and so they took me down to a meeting, and they were asking me, you know, how would I like to do it? And I was thinking, you know, they want me to do this piece for $4,000, this huge piece, and so I was very flippant about it. And finally, one of the people that was there said, kind of shoved me in the ribs, and she says that she's talking about the whole commission for this. So I got the commission, and that was my first. I have worked with churches, and in the area, if you do go to the Potter's Guild sales, take a minute and look up the stairwell, and if you get a chance to look in the sanctuary, because they have the two pieces that I like the best.
Where did you say that was?
The Potter's Guild sale is at the All Saints Church in East Lansing, and they wanted a non-traditional price figure, so I did that for them.
So do you approach public art differently than work for a gallery? Because with like something at the Catabus, you're having children seeing that, you're having maybe artists, but also maybe people who are unfamiliar with art seeing that work, or in a gallery space, your audience might be art collectors or patrons of the art. So do you approach public art differently when you think about making a piece?
Yeah, because usually now it's not as spontaneous as me making a doodle at the meeting. Yeah, they want it very specific to the space, or almost to the point. And when I was talking to Brian, is it seems like with public art, when you make the application, they ask you a question 4 times, 4 different. So you have to figure out 4 different ways to answer it, and it's hard. And making it apply to the specific work is a challenge. But it's fun. Have I worn you all out? No.
Done with your Genesis and pieces, like still working on?
No, I'm still working on Genesis. It was really funny because for some reason they keep sending me this MSU alumni thing. And I don't know if you get that, but the last cover was absolutely gorgeous. It's a young woman holding her face. So she is the separation of the waters figure. And I'm still working on the other figures, but it is fun. Any more questions? Well, thank you all for coming, and thank you for setting this up. Thank you for taking over, Michelle. And thanks for the pictures, Sarah.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Doug. I just want to make a quick note. Our next Artist Talk is June 30th at Site 4. We have cards here if you want to take them. We have merchandise for ArtPath for sale here at the table. Sarah can help you. We have surveys if you would like to please help us improve. That would be great. And I appreciate you all taking the time to come here tonight. I hope you enjoyed what Doug had to share with us, and we hope to see you in a couple weeks. Good night.